I keep hearing JD Vance, who is kind of very smart guy, went to Yale Law, and he wrote Hillbilly Elegy, and he is seen as kind of the heir to the America First populist movement, and so I think that's who Trump might want to pick.
Donald Trump is ahead of President Biden in the race for the White House, according to a poll that shows him leading in 6 of the 7 battleground states. The outcome of November's presidential election is likely to be decided in these states, where the last 2 races were won and lost. Trump leads Biden in head-to-head polling by margins of between 1 and 6 percentage points in 6 states. Here's the list: Pennsylvania, Michigan, Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, and North Carolina. In Wisconsin, where Trump addressed supporters on Tuesday, the 2 candidates are level. Daniel Lippman is the DC reporter for Politco, and Daniel's with me now. Hello, Daniel.
Thanks for having me.
It's always good to speak to you. Thanks for coming on tonight. It feels like it feels like the excitement's building just a little bit, doesn't it, ahead of this presidential race? I know you end up talking about it for 4 years, but it feels like we're on the runway now to take off to something. Are the battleground states pretty set every election cycle, or do they move around a bit?
Well, they move around to some extent because Georgia is now a battleground state.
Okay.
It did not used to be, and you have states like Ohio and Florida, which used to be battleground states, but now they are solidly red, and so they've kind of been moved off the map. And then you have states like New Hampshire, which used to be, a battleground state, and now it's solidly in the Democratic corner. And so basically, demographics are destiny here, and Florida has so many old people who are Republican now.
I see. So that kind of mixes it up, the demographics, and as people get older, they tend to vote more Republican. Will campaigning be focused in these states? And who else is going to be on the trail with President Trump to start out with? Because we don't know who his running mate is yet, do we?
We don't. He is going to definitely focus on those battleground states like Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, because of the Electoral College for everyone who lives in a state that is not up for grabs. That is very frustrating for those people. And he will be on the trail with his family often, like Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump. Laura Trump, his daughter-in-law, is now the vice chairwoman of the Republican National Committee. It's still too early to say who his running mate is, but people like JD Vance, the senator from Ohio, Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota, those are some of the choices that we're hearing about. But they've hired a law firm to do the vetting to make sure that there's no skeletons in these people's closets before they do the announcement.
Who's your bet on, Daniel?
I keep hearing JD Vance, who is kind of very smart guy, went to Yale Law, and he wrote Hillbilly Elegy, and he is seen as kind of the heir to the America First populist movement, and so I think that's who Trump might want to pick.
What about for Biden? Like, how will he focus his campaigning? Will he also be in these crunch states as well, or do you think he'll focus more tightly on others?
I think that he is definitely going to focus on these states. He's already visiting them, and he's facing some uphill battle with, especially in Michigan, the Arab American and Muslim community, which is not happy with his policy on Gaza and supporting Israel as much as he has. They've had the uncommitted vote, and so he's going to have to get a lot of young people, minorities, off the sidelines, back to supporting him if he has any chance of winning in November. So it's going to take a lot of visits, a lot of TV ads, hundreds of millions of dollars of television spending and digital spending to reverse that tide.
Daniel, with President Trump, how much time will he actually have to be able to get to these states to campaign, considering the amount of time he's got to be in court between now and November?
It's definitely a concern for the Trump campaign. but he often uses those court appearances as campaign appearances too. And so he wants to be the center of attention. He likes being a martyr and telling voters, hey, if they're persecuting me and prosecuting me, then they don't care about you, and they're going to go after you. And for a lot of Americans who have had a tough run of luck in the last couple of decades in terms of manufacturing jobs leaving America, people feeling like it's much harder to have a stable economic life, that message resonates. But he'll definitely kind of manage between the campaign appearances and the courtroom appearances.
So these polls tonight, Daniel, suggesting support growing for Donald Trump. But what about his support among Republican politicians and the ones that have previously been anti-Trump? Is there any shift in his popularity there?
Well, he's definitely gotten some Republican senators back on the Trump train after some of them had supported Nikki Haley. He even got Mitch McConnell's endorsement, the Senate Minority Leader, who he's attacked McConnell's own wife, Elaine Chao, with racist terms, who was also served in Trump's cabinet, but resigned after January 6th. And so I think it's not determinative because you don't need endorsements to win. He was opposed by a lot of the Republican establishment in 2016 as well, and he still won.
Trump said he'll only be a dictator on day one. Do we know any more about what that means?
Well, on day 2, then we're all good. He'll be respecting the Constitution, so we have nothing to worry about. But no, in all seriousness, he likes to use this type of humor, but a lot of Americans don't think it's very funny and don't think it's a joke. But we do have pretty strong guardrails where America survived one Trump presidency, and maybe after a second Trump term, America would be more afraid. But I don't think we're heading to the Banana Republic stand anytime soon.
The polls, obviously, we get a lot of polls in the UK. We get a couple a week. I mean, we've got one tonight talking about how there could be a major Labour landslide in any UK election that comes in maybe October or November, similar time to the US general election. But how reliable were the polls in the States in 2020 compared to the results kind of this far out? Did it become fruition? Did it turn into reality?
I have to look at the polls for this specific kind of month, but after the pandemic and the lockdown started in mid-March, Trump's popularity went down significantly, and they stayed low. And he was not seen as having managed the pandemic well, and the economy was cratering. Millions of people were losing their jobs during 2020. And so polls showed that he was in trouble for much of that year. He probably would have won if there was no pandemic. But here, it's potentially Biden is trying to hope that a lot of these people will come around. They will consider. A lot of people don't even think that it's going to be Biden and Trump, and so they haven't fully made up their minds. And some of the concerns about Trump's age have evaporated since the State of the Union a couple weeks ago, and so that's giving Biden some hope.
Oh, that's interesting. So since the State of the Union a couple of weeks ago, concerns about Biden's age have evaporated because people thought he did a really good job.
Yeah, people thought that he was up to the task and that he was not too old in that address. He was very forceful. And so I'm hearing less of the age concerns now, and still concerns about the Democratic base and minorities and young people not being very supportive as much of Biden as he would have hoped, but not as much on the age front. People are kind of resigned to the fact that he's old. People are Jill Biden, Hillary Clinton, they all acknowledge that. Joe Biden acknowledges it as well. So they're not trying to hide that. Yeah. Not a secret.
Before we let you go, Daniel, how, when the White House sees a poll like this that has Trump leading in 6 of 7 battleground states, how will Team Biden take the challenge to Trump?
Well, they're hoping that people will recognize that in their estimation that Americans are doing better off, and that a lot of them, a lot of people in the Biden campaign believe that Americans have forgotten the chaos of the Trump years and how we had to, every day we had to wake up to whatever Trump had tweeted, and he had reversed himself. He had fired a cabinet member overnight. And a lot of Americans do not want to have to live in that chaos anymore. So they're hoping that people will remember that and vote for Biden and keep Trump out.
Yeah, I saw that Truth Social, the social network that Trump uses to communicate with his followers, has been valued at absolute millions and millions on the basis that many think he'll keep using that instead of returning to Twitter. But of course, Elon Musk is desperate, isn't he, for Trump to return to Twitter? But he's not showing any signs yet, Daniel, is he, of coming back?
No, I keep checking his account and no activity. But if he thinks that this might almost be his new hotel ventures, where he's trying to get people to get onto Truth Social, advertise, and maybe foreign governments might want to invest in it. Who knows? But it's definitely interesting that he got bailed out by some wealthy American recently.
Are there any other key celebrities, key politicians on Truth Social? Or is it just basically Trump and his supporters?
I think it's mostly Trump and his posse and his very pro-Trump people. Maybe there was a few Democrats who joined just to kind of stick an eye
what's going on.
Yeah, but not. I don't see Brad Pitt on it.
Really? Not yet. Well, we'll see what happens after November, depending on the result. Daniel, it's always good to have a nice chat with you over there in the States. So really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Of course, thanks.
Daniel Lippman, DC reporter for Politico. If you have access to the Times, if you already subscribe, you can go through and hear about those battleground states and see where the head-to-head polling margins are so tight, and can also hear about what's going on within those individual states and how the Trump and Biden teams intend to attack them. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, North Carolina. They're all the favourites. We hear them every 4 years, don't they? But Daniel was saying there, this year, some of the ones that are more marginal maybe aren't so, because places like Florida have such an aging population, and so many older people have moved down to Florida over the past 4 years that actually it's just skewing more and more Republican. So that there's movement in those states. Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Head to the Times.co.uk if you have got a subscription.